The mission statement of Lee Memorial Library is to educate, empower, enlighten, enrich, enhance, and entertain the residents of the community. They believe the library serves as a community anchor, which provides lifelong learning and enrichment for people of all ages and will adapt to the evolving needs of the residents, since Mr. Thomas did not go to school in Allendale. The library was a prominent place for studying and was emphasized by the community, shown by the way the Lee family, when in the midst of the Great Depression, chose to save the library over other businesses and portray the library's mission statement. Mr. Stiles might have then included the picture of the library in order to promote education and remember his own. The library might have also been included in the mural to promote the town's initiative to include a public place for education within its borders. In the Great Depression, the town rallied to keep the Allendale Library afloat, showing the success and community of Allendale, even in the hardest of times. Also, the library might represent the town's emphasis on education, and remember Allendale's educational roots.
Between 1900 and 1910, when the library was founded, education and John Dewey were taking on a new role in America. High school and elementary schools were becoming focal points of American life. The library encompasses these values. Books also became a major part of the culture, with the muckrakers, newspapers like that of Hearst and Pulitzer, women's and blacks' rights movements being published. The library was founded during this time and promotes the ideas of free and accessible knowledge. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, online colleges were created, along with the Smart Board, and in 1994, the Improving America's Schools Act, IASA, was signed into law by President Bill Clinton. The inclusion of the library, while the building still remains, might be a commentary on the antiquity of books and libraries as they once were, now that the internet and technology has reshaped the library into the modern age. However, the value of education and learning is not forgotten, just modernized, as it is still memorialized on the mural. The coal chute. As early as 1870, a lumberyard existed in Allendale. Christopher Brothers, J.M. and R.J. Christopher, quote, dealers in high-grade coal, lumber, and building materials, end quote, established their business in Allendale about 1911. Who used to work in the coal chute? Were that mostly residents here, or were they from other towns?
Mostly residents. And the Ohlsdorf family, their forebears worked in it. John Ohlsdorf lives in Allendale today, and his father worked there. It was owned by the Christopher family.
Right. Yeah.
When Stiles was growing up, many men who lived in the surrounding area, and especially Allendale, worked at the lumberyard. It was a major employer for the area, along with promoting a hard day's work and a nature-loving attitude. Stiles grew up with this, telling the New York Times, quote, when I was growing up in the 1930s, it was still very rural, mostly farms, where they grew lettuce, celery, onions, and other garden crops. Only a couple of thousands of people lived in the town back then. Everybody knew everybody else, end quote. The coal chute represents the hard-working, outdoorsy, middle-class Americans in Allendale. During the early 1900s, when J.M. and R.J. Christopher established their business in the coal chute, Allendale was much smaller, and like Mr. Thomas said, mostly farms. The lumber yard with high-grade coal, lumber, and building materials not only aided the men with their jobs there, but also the farms, and helped building up the town of Allendale. It embodies both the values of the hard-working rural past and the suburban town Allendale has become.
At the turn of the century, the Second Industrial Revolution was still taking place. Industry was growing and coal was a necessary fuel. The coal chute from the mural might indicate the switch in innovation in technology and industry, ebbing out the farms in America. Also during the 20th century, Americans left cities and retreated into the suburbs, building up previously more rural neighborhoods as with Allendale. The coal chute and lumber yard would have helped build the houses in Allendale into a more suburban area, aiding with the transition of city to suburban living and the ideas of getting out of the potentially dangerous and dirty city and into the open and perceived safe suburbs. memorializing the importance of industry and infrastructure. The decorative window. The decorative window was painted by Joan Ward and is the only painting on the mural that does not directly correlate to a singular place in Allendale.
The window is real while the flower box was painted on. Stiles explained the building up of the town when he said, quote, "New houses were going up more than one at a time, replacing the farms. There's not one farm left today. I don't think there's a vacant lot either," end quote, to the New York Times, and told us that
And maybe a half hour would go by before a car came down East Allendale Avenue.
Wow.
That's one thing
Yeah, that's crazy.
most memorable,
Yeah.
I would say, the fact.
Stiles also admitted that the reason of the mural was to
I don't know if you read it, but the New York Times wrote an article about the mural, and
You did. Oh, I did. I did. No,
they did.
didn't mention my name.
I think they did.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And they were claiming that it was remembering more of the agricultural past of Allendale and the small town feel Allendale used to have.
Yes.
Is that kind of more accurate?
Do you agree with that?
And then about that, maybe expand on the idea of the agricultural past of Allendale and how
Well,
that's
there's
changed.
something to that, isn't there? The celery farm and the strawberries. So, I'd say that was true.
The decorative window combines nature and the idea of perhaps a farmhouse into the painting. It also could represent the building up of Allendale, but in a more idealistic way, with the perfect blinds and flower box, combining both the natural past of Allendale and the current state of Allendale. Zoning in Allendale has always been an issue of discussion. The town has throughout the 19th century passed many zoning laws. And after World War II, with the post-war building spurt, zoning in Allendale once again became a major concern. In 1952, Allendale adopted a zoning master plan, and in 1957, a new building plan was put into effect. The window shows a marriage of the increasingly built-up Allendale and the nature with the window box. It seems like a perfect American house, with everything in full bloom and ready to grow.
In the 1900s, people left cities for suburbs. Across the nation, infrastructure was built up after World War II. The idea of suburbanation and moving into a small town home, having a family, stable job, and pretty, relatively spacious home was part of the nation's culture. It was the American dream, and the window reflects that.
The Celery Farm. The Celery Farm is a 107-acre freshwater wetland that was bought by the Allendale Borough in 1981 for $140,000, then at 87 acres.
Mr. Stiles Thomas is the current marsh warden of the Celery Farm. Over the years, he and his wife Lillian Thomas have worked tirelessly for the upkeep of this nature preserve. They originally convinced Allendale to buy the Celery Farm in 1981. They even have a Northern Highlands scholarship in their honor, given annually to a student who plans on pursuing environmental sciences. It is a rare jewel in the heart of a developed area, said Mr. Thomas of the Celery Farm in a New York Times article. Taking into consideration Mr. Thomas's love of nature and continued hard work with the Celery Farm, it is clear to see why he would want to include this aspect of Allendale on the 1994 mural.
At the beginning of the 20th century, the preserve was a celery, lettuce, and onion farm that sent vegetables to highly commercial areas, including Boston, Philadelphia, New York, and Camden, New Jersey, for the Campbell Soup Factory. In 1952, the Fike Nature Association, who co-manages the Celery Farm with the town of Allendale, was created by a group of people dedicated to saving underdeveloped land in Bergen County, New Jersey. By the time the mural was being planned, the Celery Farm was the paradise for local bird watchers, with over 225 species of birds cited in 1994, including the rare black rail, king rail, and bald eagle.
Environmentalism in the U.S. began mainly with Rachel Carson's Silent Spring in 1962. This movement pervaded the country with a focus on preserving nature and slowing industrial development. With the establishment of the Environmental Protection Agency in 1970, the nation lamented the passing of its historical foundings as the New World flushed with natural resources. With the closing of the 20th century, people now began to look forward to the future and work towards the promotion and creation of a cleaner earth.
The Old United Methodist Church was built by O.H.P. Archer in 1875. Thomas has always been a proponent of the kind of tight-knit community he experienced growing up in Allendale in the 1920s and 1930s. Having religious organizations in town is one way to strengthen this community bond. In response to a question from the New York Times regarding how people can get involved in town affairs, Thomas responded, among other reasons, that, quote, they can join a synagogue or one of the local churches, end quote. Allendale shares a strong sense of community. Although only one way to strengthen community bonds, churches can certainly accomplish the task of creating a common center for townspeople to share. In addition, choosing to portray the Old Methodist Church rather than the newer one may represent an appreciation for the past and for Allendale's general history.
Religion has been a large part of the U.S.'s past, since its Protestant foundings and the following Great Awakenings, which there have been 3 to 4 of in American history. The long-debated Fourth Great Awakening has not been completely accepted, as have the other 3. However, those that believe in this awakening say that it occurred in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Therefore, this strengthening of religion at the end of the 20th century may have influenced the addition of the Old Methodist Church in the mural.
The strawberries depicted on the mural represent Allendale's long history as an area predominantly dedicated to strawberry farms.
The strawberries. The painting of that. There was a strawberry farm, correct?
Yeah.
Was that basically the intention of the strawberries, or could you talk about the strawberry farms?
As far as I know, I don't remember when they raised the strawberries. It was before my time.
Oh, okay.
But I think it was north of the Selly farm, more on the hillside,
Gotcha.
on Crescent Avenue.